What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here from DFS Army. You guys know me as the Geek. We're here to talk about UFC Fight Night 185, Blaydes versus Lewis. 14-fight card for that we're going to break down for Draftkings and SuperDraft purposes. So, real quick, DFS Army subscribers, you guys have already seen, or possibly you might have seen, the long-form version of this breakdown. Today, I'm going to do what's called a quick hitter breakdown. So I'm going to try to keep this to 15, 20 minutes or less. We're going to go through the fights and really, because I've started making my lineups, so I really got a feel now for kind of how things are going to flow together on this specific card. And it's actually very unique. A card with a lot of fights, 14, that's a lot more than we normally get, but a lot of really sketchy ones that are closely lined and some legitimate live dogs, I would say. So let's get right into it here. I'm going to start at the top at the first fight of the night, Curtis Blaydes versus Derek Lewis. And guys, for me, this fight is going one of two ways. It's actually really bettable as well because I can tell you exactly what's going to happen, and I love fights like this. Curtis Blaydes is going to ragdoll Derek Lewis for a little bit, and then he's going to finish him. Let's be clear. There's one scenario where that doesn't happen. Only one. And the only one is where somehow Black Beast Derek Lewis, the All-American, lands a miracle KO punch, flying knee. It would probably happen very early in the fight if it did. The odds of which are very, very low. But that's the only scenario that I can possibly foresee where this doesn't end with a Curtis Blaydes finish inside the distance. Because there's no way Derek Lewis is lasting 5 full rounds getting ragdolled by Curtis Blaydes. That's just not happening. So look for Curtis Blaydes to win this one inside the distance. And for me, he's an all-in play on all formats. If I was to play any Derek Lewis, he's plus 365, which I think those odds are, it should be even wider than that. Looks like, yeah, a little bit of money came in on him late, a little bit wider. But more importantly, with Derek Lewis, when if he does win, it's going to be an early finish. So you could play him. I don't really want to play him at plus 365, which is, I don't know, 15%. I might, if you need to give him 10% exposure in your lineups, 10 or 15, just for that miracle knockout, low ownership, that's the only reason. But for the most part, Curtis Blaydes should be in every single lineup because his scoring should be massive, regardless of how he wins the fight. So load up on Curtis Blaydes. No need to really get into that one too much. We have a fight here between Caitlyn, Vera, and Yana Kunitsunaya, and between you and I, this fight just does not project well for scoring purposes. Fight go decision minus 290. These are not high action fighters. So the only one I'm full fading Caitlyn Vera. She's too expensive on DraftKings. She's too expensive everywhere. She doesn't do anything that will cause her to score well. Let me actually open these up so you can see this. But at 9,300, 77.86, not going to cut it. Full fade on her. If you want to play a little Yana Kunitsunaya, I don't think she has no chance of winning. For her price, she actually is probably a good cash play on the card, but I think she's going to lose. So it's not somewhere that I've gone on the card. In my small number of lineups, I'm not involving this fight. All right, fight number 3, we've got Charles Rosa taking on Derek Minner. This is a fight that I want to target this on all formats. I love it on Fanduel in particular, where submission attempts and takedown attempts and stop takedown, where you get scoring for more grappling points even than on DraftKings. Overall, Derek Minner is either a guy that's going to submit you in the first round, finish you in the first round, or get finished. We already talked about Charles Rosa lasting on the big show, lasting 3 full rounds with Bryce Mitchell draped all over him. He's an excellent submission grappler. I think he's a better submission grappler than Derek Minner. Therefore, I expect that Charles Rosa will be able to survive the storm early from Derek Minner and eventually find a submission of his own, maybe in the second round. He's priced at 8,800 on DraftKings, which is like a pretty good price point for somebody who's going to who could get like a second round finish. We've got to get some Minner exposure because when he does win, he wins in the first round. But he's not he's a guy that I'm getting exposure to. I'm going to make sure I do, but he's not a primary underdog play for me. I do like Rosa a lot. He's not been a great scorer in his wins most of the time. As you can see, he's topped out around 93. So for me also, not a must play, but I don't mind if that's how much I have left going to Rosa, not because Rosa scores well in his wins, but because Minner produces great scores when he loses for the winner. It's like the opposite of what you would think. Marley knows what's up, man. We are taking down that money. What's up, my man? All right, next fight of the night. So part of this is there are certain fights that are really, really important to be all in on. Blaydes and Lewis, I'm going to be all in on it. Minner and Rosa, I'm going to have a lot of exposure. I'm not going to go all in because, again, the favorite, I think he's going to win in the second round. Minner, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to it. But next fight is an all-in fight for me. Chris Daukaus taking on Alexei Oleinik. And when I say all in, I'm looking at potential DraftKings scoring for the winner to understand why there's a reason that certain fights look great for DraftKings, Fanduel, SuperDraft scoring, and other ones don't. This one does. This fight is ending inside the distance. There's a minus 685 doesn't go to decision prop. Understand what that means. That means that the chances are somebody's getting finished in this fight, and the chances are it's going to be scoring really, really well on all of the formats, all of them. So I like situations. There are 15 fights, too many fights. It's very confusing. It doesn't have to be. When you're all in on Curtis Blaydes, you're all in on one of these two, we're already starting to find a path to lineup construction that can sort of reduce the number of variables that we have to have in every lineup. Now, unfortunately, with this fight, we have to make a choice between these two guys, and it's a difficult choice to make. You want to ask me who's going to win? I don't know. Chris Daukaus, a much better boxer, a much younger guy. If he can keep it standing with Oleinik, he will knock him out. He's supposedly a BJJ in black belt, which a BJJ black belt, which is very, very important. Alexei Oleinik is essentially a one-trick pony. He's got one move that he can do. He can take you down and submit you using an anaconda choke, a headlock, weird-ass chokes that you've never seen before. He pulls your head forward. It didn't work on Derek Lewis in his last fight because Lewis has such a giant neck that you can't choke him, apparently. But Chris Daukaus is not a giant man with a giant neck. He could be choked out. Will it happen here? I don't know. Will Oleinik be able to take him down? We'll have to see. We don't know. Which is why you got to get both sides of this fight. The fight is cheap enough in the sense of 8,600 and 7,600 on DraftKings that you basically have to put one of these two guys in just about every lineup. So you might as well just do that. I definitely favor Daukaus a little bit. So maybe it's like 65-35 for me, but every line you're making a lineup. It's like, boom. All right, pick one. You're just starting your lineup like that. Blaydes. All right. This one, Vera, it's Kunitsunaya, skip. Rosa, Minner, maybe. We'll maybe come back to it. Daukaus, Oleinik, choose one. That's how you're starting your lineup. Okay, I chose one, right? I chose Oleinik. That's one way to go. I chose Daukaus. It's another way. That's how your lineup is coming together, and it's the same for all sites. I'm favoring Daukaus, but Oleinik can lock up a sub. It could happen. And if he does, he's going to score 100 fantasy points. And if you don't have him, you're not going to win all the monies like Kyle Marley, the big Marl himself, is talking about in the comments. All right, next up, we've got Nasser Imova versus Phil Howes. And this is another one. I'm just going to, the fight doesn't go to decision. It's minus 265. So the word on Phil Hawes, he's one of these muscle-bound guys that is an explosion of energy in the first round. If you last past round one, he tends to gas and then lose. Both of these guys are really good fighters. Hawes, again, more explosive, super dangerous in round one. If you're a betting man, Big Marl, if you're a betting man, you might be watching this fight to see after round one, maybe live bet Nasser here. I like both of these guys, but most important is they're priced at 8,100, very cheap, and again, a very, very high inside the distance prop, 8K, 8,200. What does that mean? You're going to choose one of these two for your lineup. That's it. Again, 14 fights. You're like, Geek, you're not fucking narrowing it down. Yes, I am, because what we're doing is we're narrowing down which fights you should target and which ones you should target all in, and which fights you sprinkle in a little here, little sprinkles, little sprinklies here and there. That's it. So this fight, you're going to go all in on it. Phil Hawes, more likely to get a first round finish. He's done that a lot in his career. He pretty much finishes everybody in the first round. That's what he does. Imova is a Dagestani fighter, guys. Now he fights out of France. He's not like a real Dagestani, but he's born in Dagestan. Dagestan produces very tough men who are good wrestlers. And Imova is a good, well-rounded fighter. Doesn't have the power and strength, not many people do, of Phil Hawes, but we've seen this situation play out before. You put a Phil Hawes in there with a guy who's tough enough and who can weather the early storm. Hawes is going to gas. So early storm for Phil Hawes. You want to play him? Great. If not, you're going to play Imova. Pretty much should have one of these two in almost every lineup that you construct. So again, it's a very simple decision. This guy or that guy. It's not that hard, guys. Now, make the right calls, of course. If you're asking me which one I'm picking, I picked Imova to win, but like, am I confident? Hell no. So I'm gonna probably mix these almost 50-50. Again, I'm trying for the one magical lineup that will win a tournament. If I was doing a high dollar entry and I need to be right on all these spots, you almost want to avoid these 50-50 shots a little bit, or just go with your leans. Like I'm showing you on screen. All right, let me put on screen kind of my leans. It would be Dawkins and Imova probably, because I don't like gassers. We've seen with Alonzo Menefield. We've seen with Agapova. These gassers, they start to step up in opponent quality. It goes bad. Next fight on the card, we have Tom Aspinall against Andrea Olofsky. This is not one of the all-in fights for me. This is a fight where, listen, Aspinall has looked unbelievable in his career. I don't believe he's been out of the first round. He's finished every fight within a couple of minutes. He looks amazing. Andrea Olofsky, absolutely vulnerable to getting knocked out. So there's a reasonable chance that Aspinall gets an early finish here. Now let's take a look at the inside the distance prop, though. It's not that great. Minus 160, which is about 55%. If it's happening, it's not Andrea Arlovsky getting a knockout. It's going to be Aspinall. The concern I have with Aspinall is Arlovsky tends to slow fights down. He can get knocked out. I think the most likely outcome is Arlovsky gets smashed like fast. First round. That's the most likely outcome. But if he can last past the first round, we have never seen Aspinall in a fight beyond one round. So I like Aspinall here. I like him a lot, but I'd rather at 9,200, it's hard to afford it. I don't mind it, but you'd have to really, that has to be in like an Olynyk lineup. There are only certain lineups that are going to work like that. I like Aspinall, but I'm not all in on him. It's GPP play for me, but he's got a good chance of getting a very fast finish. So he makes for a specifically and a particularly great play on DFS sites like FanDuel and SuperDraft here. Let's see where he is on SuperDraft. Yeah, I mean, you can get him at a okay multiplier on SuperDraft. So at 1.65 champion, that's not the best. Yeah, he's a 1.1 in flex, just okay. But I like him here, and I probably like him. I definitely like him better than some of these other 1.1s like Emmers, Vera, and even Spivak. As far as Arlovsky goes, not super interested in him. I don't see him getting a finish. Could he win? Yes. Could he win for 7K? Sure. Is he a punt play? Why not? But very low exposure if I'm making 150, and maybe just one lineup, handcraft that I might. The way I work with my handcrafts is I try to cycle through some whatever I consider to be live dogs, and I just kind of cycle through them one at a time. With my favorites, I'll load up on, and I'll get to one of my favorite underdogs on this card here in a minute. Let's continue. Danny Chavez, Jared Gordon. Chavez looks pretty good. Gordon looks like he has more volume. Chavez looks like he has more power. This is a tough fight to call for me. I think that, Chavez is probably a rightful favorite, but I don't love the volume here. 49 strikes, got some takedowns against TJ Brown, I think it was. He's fine. Gordon is a volume guy. Not a great fighter, but a volume fighter. He's tough. He's going to have a hard time taking down Chavez. Chavez was just really good with the takedown defense in his previous fight. There's almost no footage on Chavez from before that. So I don't know if it was just his fight, he looked great, or if he's really good. This is a really mysterious fight. I'm going to take my chances here. I don't think it's going to score well for DraftKings or FanDuel anyway, but either guy, they're priced in a point that you do want some exposure to this fight. I think Chavez has a chance to knock out Gordon, and I think Gordon could potentially out volume Chavez. The best thing about Gordon is his volume. Look at these strikes, 241, 171. He is throwing nonstop, and that could be his saving grace on winning a high-scoring decision if he gets there. I'm worried about the leg kicks of Chavez, really. That's the main concern I have. It's just the leg kicks of Chavez. If he just destroys the leg of Gordon in the smaller cage, you hate to see your guy in there getting kicked in the leg. There's just nothing worse than your fighter who you bet on getting kicked nasty in the leg. And I just haven't seen Gordon defend against that. So I don't know. If he can't, Gordon would normally defend against that by going for a takedown, but it's just unclear if he'll be able to take Chavez down or not. I don't know. For that reason, it's mysterious. I like Gordon because of his volume. I'm going to get exposure to this fight, though, in general, because the way this card is shaping up, you need some of these middling guys, but I don't love it, and it's definitely not an all-in fight. Number 8, we're moving as fast as I can, guys. Dracar close versus Luis Pena. And this one's pretty... Actually, I like this fight a lot for DraftKings purposes, not because I think it's going to score well, but because the odds for Luis Pena, plus 147 for 7,200, is really, really, really a bargain. So what the odds are telling us is that Pena has probably a little bit more of a chance of winning this fight than what DraftKings thought when they were pricing him. I like Pena in this spot as one of my favorite underdogs on this card because for plus 147, I can get a $7,200 fighter. That opens up a little bit, not that much, but a little bit in my lineup here in terms of breathing room to fit some other pieces. So give me Luis Pena as one of my favorite underdogs. As far as Dracar close goes, no. I'm just going to full fade him. I don't like his potential scoring here in a win. Even if he does win, I don't think he gets there at 9K. So I'd cross him off my list. He's not a viable play for me. It's only Luis Pena. See, what we try to do here is narrow things down so that there's not a million decisions staring at us in the face. Pena's off the list. Okay, next up, we've got... I'm not Pena. Dracar close is off the list. Pena, one of my favorite underdog plays. Probably my favorite real underdog play that's like, not at 8 or 7,900. Probably my favorite of them. Maybe followed by, I don't know yet. All right, next up, we've got John Castaneda, Sexy Mexi, taking on Eddie Weiland. And I'm going to just make this simple. This fight does not project very well from a scoring point of view. Neither one of these guys does anything that really produces good DraftKings scores. Fight goes decision minus 160, so there's a reasonable chance for a finish here, but it's not very high. Let's take a look at who they like for the finish. Weiland KO, TKO, Weiland by submission. It's like even odds. Inside the distance, plus 370, plus 325. You're going to need an inside the distance finish here. Weiland has excellent takedown defense. And so you're really not, let me show this. Weiland's been in the UFC forever, so you get to see real numbers. 86% takedown defense. You're not taking this guy down. It's going to be a striking battle, and neither of these guys throw a lot of strikes, so it's going to be low scoring unless somebody gets cracked in the chin. With that being said, Castaneda has no business probably being in the UFC. I don't know. Castaneda has no business being in the UFC. He's 3 losses in the last 4 fights. Who the fuck is this guy? How are you in the UFC? I don't know. Eddie Weiland is a grizzly vet. He's been in the UFC, in there with really, really good guys. And again, who the fuck is this guy? 3 losses? You made it to the UFC? On Combate, you're losing? Man, hell no. So for me, I'm going with Eddie Weiland here at 7,900. He's my pick to win the fight. Eddie Weiland's old. He's slowing down. He's grizzly, but I don't care. He's a real UFC fighter. Castaneda has not proven to me that he is that. So I'm going with Eddie Weiland here. I don't think he's going to score super well, but that's the guy. He opens up some stuff at 7,900 in your lineups if you want to use him. Okay, next up, I have what I believe is an all-in fight in my mind, or another heavy exposure fight. Julian Rosa versus Nate Landwehr. This fight, these two guys are just kind of like crazy guys that go at it. Landwehr is a wild man screaming like a lunatic. Juicy J is just getting knocked out or choking people out. He tends to be involved in finishes. Fight doesn't go decision minus 145. And again, most important, the salary is $8,100 a pop. That allows for some things that you can do. With 14 fights, you don't have to have super heavy underdogs or a lot of them in your lineup. You can kind of squeeze in some even odds fighters. Unfortunately, we have to have leans in these fights because if we had 6 50-50 fights, the odds of hitting them correctly in a combination of 6 is like 2.5% of getting 6 winners. We need to try to get 6 winners in our lineups. I'm favoring Nate Landwehr here. I just like how he looked against Darren Elkins. He's a wild man. I think he scores well. He landed 118 strikes in that fight against Elkins, and Elkins tried to take him down a bit. He was holding him down. Juicy J, Rosa, Julian, he's probably not going to go for takedowns. He's going to stand and strike. So these two guys are just going to stand in there and bang. I have a feeling somebody's going to sleep during this fight, and I'm going to favor Landwehr, but I also want exposure to Rosa just in case he can pull something off. Landwehr is very, very poor fight IQ. He's in there acting like a clown. So I love this fight. I like the salary level. Again, we choose one. My favorite is Landwehr, but get some Rosa. This is a fight to target in your DFS lineups. Clear that. All right, next up, we've got Casey O'Neill taking on Shayna Dobson. Shayna Dobson coming off the big win against Marina Agapova. Agapova literally beat the snot out of Shayna Dobson so bad that she lost all of her energy, couldn't move, and then Shayna Dobson comes in and gets a finish on her. Beyond that, Shayna Dobson has been really, really bad in her UFC career. I mean, the worst of it was the first round KO against Priscilla Cachoeira, but she's gotten her ass beat pretty good in all of her fights. She hasn't looked particularly great. She's a stand-up boxer. She doesn't really do anything that's very impressive to me. I'm not a fan of Shayna Dobson, and she has no takedown defense. Casey O'Neill wants to take you down and wrestle you. I like that style. I'm always going to favor that. So if Casey O'Neill is going to come in and she's going to, throw a 1-2, 1-2, and she's going to go for a takedown, that's what's going to happen here. Shayna Dobson has never successfully defended the takedown throughout her UFC career. Will it start here? Probably not. So what I'm expecting is O'Neill to take her down, Dobson get back up, take her down, and potentially submit her along the way. I really like the Casey O'Neill play, but unfortunately, Casey O'Neill has no UFC history, and she hasn't really been in there. I mean, she's 5-0, but she hasn't been in there with anybody who's really tested her. She's a young fighter. She's Scottish, and if it's not Scottish, it's crap. So she must not be crap. Therefore, I like Casey O'Neill here. I think Shayna Dobson is probably worse than what people think. She's coming off a win against Agapova, but before that, I thought she was the worst women's MMA fighter in the UFC. So I'm not changing that because she outlasted a crazy horse semen drinking Marina Agapova who gassed herself out, after 4 minutes. That to me, no. So I'm going with Casey O'Neill here to get this win. I actually have a bet on Casey O'Neill as well. Cross fingers. Wish me luck. All right, next up we have Jamal Emmers taking on Chaz Skelly. This fight does not scream excitement to me. Chaz Skelly is basically a submission grappler. He somehow pulls off wins. There's nothing he does that's super impressive, but he'll find his way to an armbar, a submission of some sort. And Jamal Emmers is a bit of a bonehead, so that combination, he's very athletic, but he's got a little bit of boneheadedness in him. Does some things that you have to question in terms of his fight IQ. He's not very good at winning rounds or understanding how to win a round. So the fight ends inside the distance. Fight goes to decisions -160. So this looks like it could go to decision here. I definitely don't love Emmers in this spot. He hasn't been a finisher really. And I think he could get a bunch of takedowns because Chaz Skelly really doesn't defend takedowns very heavily. What he tries to do is allow you to take him down and reverse you and submit you. So if Emmers is going for takedowns, I think he's going to be in a slightly dangerous spot. If you see like his wins, submission. So this is what he wants to do. KO, submission. He wants to submit you. He wants to take you down. He wants to get into that grappling range with you and submit you. So I think he's actually live for a submission, and Skelly's going to be one of the underdogs that I'm using a little bit because if he pulls one of those off, he's going to score really well. If it doesn't go that way, then Emmers, I don't really see him scoring enough to get super excited. You mix him in if you're making 150, but he's definitely not one of my primary targets this week on any site. We're almost there, guys. I'm in Zahabi against Draco Rodriguez. This is pretty much just a fade fight. I'm in Zahabi is one of these really professional, slow-paced fighters. He's not very good, but he is skilled enough to slow down a fight. He's got, good grappling. I don't think this is going to go to grappling. These guys are going to want to stand and bang. Draco's a little bit of a wild man. Zahabi, a little bit of a counterpuncher. He's the brother of Faraz Zahabi. He's a trainer, with TriStar. He's one of the coaches. But he hasn't looked great in his UFC career. To me, this is just a full fade. I don't need either side of this. Yeah, Zahabi could win. He's plus 168 as an underdog, but if you look at his scoring and his output, it just doesn't look great. If you want to mix in a share or two here, but I mean, here it is. His win, he scored 58. You can't even score this bad in the current format, and yet there it is. 44 strikes, 46 strikes. He's not throwing enough volume to make him interesting for me at all. Don't want it. And I think these type of guys slow down the fight, so I don't really want too much of Rodriguez either. Draco, it's a no. You know what? Is it a better score? I think if you submit somebody in the first or second round, it is what it is. I don't think that the new system is going to favor Skelly because he might be on his back for most of it. I don't, could he get, I'd like to see Skelly get a takedown and be in top position. And if it does, that would favor him. But I kind of think it might go a different way where he gets taken down, maybe reversal or throws up a submission from guard. So I'm not sure, but I mean, certainly doesn't hurt him, the new scoring system. I'm not sure it's going to help either. And Skelly's definitely not a volume striking guy. He's just not. I mean, 21, 30. He doesn't throw. Look at this. These numbers are not lying. 42 strikes in a win, 27, 21 strikes. These are not high numbers. Here's a decision win. He only threw 21 strikes, 80 insignificant. So, I don't expect too much scoring out of Skelly. We're really just trying to get a win from his salary level than anything else. And if he gets a fast submission, he'll score well. All right, finally, last fight on the card. Sergey the Milksack Spivak taking on Jared Vandera, the Mountain. Now, these are two big dudes, but interestingly, the fight goes to decision, but it's not that great. Minus 115, minus 115. So this is not a fight that definitely projects to smash the scoreboards. On top of that, Milksack is priced at 9,100 on DraftKings. That's not a great price point. Let's see what the SuperDraft. It's also 1.1. I mean, when you look at this, it's not that good. It's not that good. I'm going to go through. I'll do a quick browse of the SuperDraft numbers here, but it's not that good. So I'm not in love with Spivak in terms of wanting to play him over Curtis Blaydes or even Tom Aspinall. He's a secondary tournament play. You can mix him in if he can fit. And I actually do think Spivak is going to win because he's like a low-level UFC heavyweight, whereas Vandera is a low-level non-UFC heavyweight. And usually the UFC level guy wins. That doesn't mean that that's a lock here, but Spivak has some wrestling. He's actually got skills beyond being a boxer and a brawler. Vandera, if he has those skills, I haven't seen them. He might, I don't know, but I haven't seen them. So I'm going to go with Spivak to get this win. As far as DraftKings scoring, he's just in the mix, but he's a guy that, I like maybe a little less than some other guys. Even Rosa, I like a little more. So he's just a guy that if I'm making a bunch of lineups, I drip him in there. But he's not a focal point. So let's go back over this here. What are the focal point fights? Curtis Blaydes, yes. Rosa Mina, yes. Dackhouse, Olenek, all in. House, Imova, pretty close to all in on this one. Aspinall, get exposure. So those are all in fights. And Juicy J and Landwehr, pretty close to all in. When you load up on those few fights, and I'll just show you again a quick example of how to do this on DraftKings. All right, I'm loading up on these fights. Boom. Okay, which fight? We talked about Dracar. All right, let's do an Olenek version, right? Get a little loose. I told you Pena, my favorite underdog play. So now what do I want to do? I got to pick one of Imova and Phil House. Which one? Let's do House because he's going to smash. And then, okay, here we go. We're left with one. You're a noob would have this amount of salary and say, oh, Yana Kunitsunaya, I can afford her now. Don't play Yana Kunitsunaya. Fuck her. Here we go. We put in Aspinall, leave a couple hundy on the table. Boom. You just made a lineup. That's how it's done. Pick from the all-in fights. Make the right choices. And as you make a bunch of these, say, all right, well, I'm covered for Olenek in this path. Olynyk House. Those are the ones that I'm mostly looking at. Like, oh, I have an Olynyk House. Okay, now I've got an Olynyk Imova. All right, Landwehr. All of these, that guy too. So we have these all in fights, and we're mixing them up with our favorites. And then I go, okay, let me do a Dak House, Imova, Landwehr, Dak House, Imova, Juicy J. If you mix those up, that's going to lead you to the right path for a victory. Real quick on SuperDraft. Remember, if you're not currently subscribed to SuperDraft, get over there now. It's my favorite new site to play on, and I kid you not. I love the format, NASCAR especially. Look at this account. You might be like, hey, that looks like shit compared to your DraftKings. Yeah, I put in $200 here, and I'm up to $4,200. It's amazing. Like, in the modern day, to do that. Like I did, that was something we could do on DraftKings back in the day. It's not that hard here. Get over there, sign up with promo code DFS Army. They do a full 50% deposit match up to $1,000. So none of the sites are doing this right now. When you sign up with promo code DFS Army over there, you put in $1,000, they give you 500 addition drip in your account. That is the shit. You want that because they're running overlay like crazy in all their contests right now as well. So just a quick look here on SuperDraft, they give you a multiplier. So we want to look at the way I start on here. I actually start at the bottom and I look, all right, who do I think can win? And I look for the potential winners down here. And those are the ones I want to load up on rather than the super favorites. So if I kind of like Luis Pena, I don't think he's going to score well in a win. But at 1.45, I might consider him. I do like him. Here, Derek Minner, if you're going to play Derek Minner, he should be your champion spot, your 50% bonus spot. If you're going to play Olynyk, he should be your champion spot because he's getting that giant multiplier. And these guys are finishing the first round or bust guys. So if you play these guys in your lineup, they need to be in the champion spot. Okay, as I roll up, again, Pena, I think I could play him as a flex, even with a win, because I don't think he scores incredibly well in a win. Another potential pairing for your champion spot, House or Imobov. They have a nice multiplier, so you want to, if you're going to put them in your lineup, you need them to win. If they're win, like if House is in your lineup, let me show you one. If House is in my lineup, he should probably be my champion. It's actually so many good spots, but because that multiplier is so high, I'm going to lean on him that way. But again, we go right back to the fighters we like because they just don't price them correctly. I want 1.3x. 0.3x in this format is huge. In other words, having a multiplier in MMA is huge because unlike NBA, where the variance from one player is 20 points to 50 points, like the variance is massive between players. In MMA, it's less massive. Like usually in MMA, a shitty scoring decision is like 75, 80 points, and a great finish is about 100. So that gap there is really small. And if you have 75 but a 1.2 multiplier, it's kind of the same as like if you get 100. Like it levels out. And then if that 75 person actually scores really well, puts up 90, somebody else scores 100, but you got a 1.2, you're going to pass them. So in this format, a 1.3 is just very, very valuable. You want to take these guys that you like with the higher multipliers. And again, we're always going to choose between Dacus and same approach. Going to choose between Dacus and Olynyk in every lineup. And we want to use Curtis Blaydes even with the smaller multiplier in every lineup. So this would kind of be how I might construct a super draft lineup. And of course, you got to build a bunch of lineups if you're going to try to win a tournament. All right, guys, that's it for the quick hitter. 14 fights, 34 minutes. Pretty impressed. Good luck today. Let's crush it. Let's see those DFS Army helmets at the top of the contest like we always do. If you're not signed up with DFS Army, get over there now. You can use our optimizer, all of our good stuff, and you have breakdowns like this for every sport pretty much constantly. We're going to teach you how to smash. Good luck, everyone.